MicroStation provides a couple of tools for working with materials definitions. The first of which is the Material Editor settings box, where you obviously set and edit material definitions. And the second is the Apply Material tools, and we'll take a look at both of those in this video. Let's look at the Material Editor dialog box first. And you're going to open that from the Visualization toolbox, and we're looking for Define Materials, but also we see the Apply Materials here too. Now the Apply Materials is also inside the Define Materials dialog box as well, so you don't normally need this one. So we'll start with Define Materials. So we click on that and open it, and we see a fairly complex settings box. But if you look down the side here, the first thing you'll see is that the items here relate to the Material Definitions PDF file that I had you look at in the previous video. Now there are some tabs, and we are in the General tab right now. But there's also a Transparency tab, and we have a Fur and an Expert tab, which we will not be looking at quite yet. So back to the General tab. Right now, we have no values at all to speak of, and you can't change anything anyway because everything is grayed out and unresponsive. That's because we have nothing over on this side in terms of material files or material palettes, which we're about to rectify. Now, before we do that, however, let's take a closer look at some of the options in this box. At the top here under Settings, you can have the box display in Advanced mode, which it's doing right now, or take away Advanced mode and see a much reduced version of that. Now this is fine if you have a material which you simply want to apply and make minimal changes to, but we want the maximum Advanced mode. Notice too that View Descriptions is on, meaning that in Advanced mode, when you hover your cursor over an item, you'll get a message telling you what you're looking at and what the settings mean. So I'd suggest you leave that setting on. Now, if you're working with an earlier version of MicroStation, somewhere below SS3 and SS2, you won't see these tabs displayed exactly the same. However, the items within these tabs are still available to you in different locations in the main page here. And at the bottom, we have a preview window, which is blank, of course, right now, which gives you a reasonable idea of what the material will look like when it's applied. And we'll see how that works when we have a material available to us. So let's add a material and see what settings are available to us. And we'll do that by going to this icon, which is Open Palette. And a palette is much like an artist's palette with paint on it, except these palettes contain materials. So we'll click on that, and up pops this little dialog box with MicroStation's standard palette files. I want you to click on this one, Carpet and Fabric. It's got a .pal extension for palette, and say OK. And in pops all of the materials which are in that palette. I'm going to expand my box a little bit here so we can see all of them. And now you'll see values on the right-hand side here. And those values, of course, relate to whichever material is selected. Now, you quickly zip through some of these to see how the material definition changes, and notice that the preview window will also change as well. Looking at the preview window, the mode is Luxology, meaning that it's being displayed with Luxology rendering, and you may need to adjust the slider here to see the material a little better. Quality is Draft, which is pretty standard, but you can, if you want, go to a final quality, which gives you a much better idea of how it will look, but Draft is fine for our purposes. Plus, of course, it takes time to generate the preview in Luxology. You can change it from a cube to any other type of display. Leave it on cube for the moment. And refresh is automatic, meaning that as we change the materials, the preview window will also automatically refresh itself. Now, please don't make any changes to the values on the right-hand side as you zip through the different materials. And the reason is, of course, that these are MicroStation's standard materials, which you will need constantly, and you should not change the values. What you will do is to copy one of these material definitions to your own palettes, and there you can edit as you wish. Now we can change the display here. If we double-click on the heading at the top, then you'll see a display of all the materials in the palette. So the materials are applied to a chair, which gives you quite a nice idea of the differences between the materials. However, you can't edit anything at this point, since these are just display items. So we'll double-click that back, and back to our list. And when we click on an item, we'll see the definitions again. Now let's take a look at the tools that will apply these materials to the elements in your design. Go to the top of the screen here, and this set of icons here, if you drop it down, you'll see that we can assign material, remove assignments, attach, remove attachments, query, and preview. I'm going to click on that, which will open up the Assign Materials Tool Settings window. But you'll see the same icons across here, which are the same tools as we saw by dropping this down, except we see them all here. So we can quickly change between different methods of applying or unapplying materials, and the name will change depending on which tool we're using. Now, the one difference between this method and this method is that you'll notice there's an extra option here, which is Preview, which will allow you to preview the material on an element before you finally decide to use it or not. So quite a useful feature. Let's just take a closer look at this information. First of all, assign by level and color. It's exactly that. You select a level and a color, and all elements on that level with that color will be assigned a particular material. This is why I had you create the various levels in the table drawings and the specific colors for the elements, so we can use this exact tool. Then we have remove assignment. That just removes material placed by this assignment method. Then we have attach material. So we can physically attach a material directly to an element, and the level and color of the elements have no bearing on the situation. And here's remove the attachment. And this is query. So we can start this tool, click on an element, and it will give us the material which is already applied to that element. Again, we have another preview window, which mimics this one, although sometimes you don't see quite the same thing. Okay, we have everything in place now, and we can start to apply materials to our table assembly. Now, one thing you might want to note here that on my screen, my material editor extends below the area of the screen, and that's simply because the resolution of my screen for the videos is quite low, and this is what happens. You won't have this problem, I don't think. So, next video, we'll get into assigning materials to your elements.